So what makes this a country property? Well, you're
You're in the country.
You're in the country, but you know it is a country property, and then there's an in the town property, and a couple of the key elements of a country property are that they are not connected to any local utilities. There is propane on this property. There are 2 wells, and there's a septic system.
So that's usually indicative of a country property does not have city services or city
Right.
utilities.
Yeah, you may have an issue with cable or getting
Cell service.
cell service out on a country property. So just you know right away when there's well and septic there, you're going to be looking at additional inspections. You're going to be looking at additional red flags that you're going to have to look out for.
And then also what makes it a country property, like Allison and I discussed, is that all your systems, folks, stay on this property and come from this property. So when you flush the toilet, it goes into a septic tank. When you turn the faucet and get the water, it comes out of the same property where your septic is. Now, I know a lot of people can't get their head around that, all right? But believe me, okay, it's been done for many years, and there's certain safeguards you look out for. This property, the reason we're using this property, it was built back in the early 50s. And at that time, in the early 50s, your wellhead had to be only 50 feet away from your septic system, the leach field. Not so much the tank, but the leach field. All right, nowadays, it's 100 feet. So when we came here and we measured initially, we could see that the wellhead was 100 feet, was right smack in the middle of the septic field, the leach field. All right, so there's also a second well, which is located in the back corner of the property. So this is a good thing. You want to see that. So when we come to see the property, we immediately said, okay, it's 1.7 acres. How do you know it's 1.7 acres? The county tax assessor's records?
Well, it's going to give you a good idea. It
idea.
says that it's 1.7 acres, but really the best way to know is to have a survey, or at the very least have the corners marked by a survey company.
And they say right on the tax records, when you see these maps, they're assessor's parcel maps, they stay right on there for assessment purposes only. And that means they're not guaranteeing the acreage at all. I've seen properties, larger properties that have been off 200 or 300 or 400 acres based on the assessor's map. So you don't want to use that. You want to make sure you get a reputable firm that comes out, either match the corners or measure, okay, survey the entire property so you know how much land you actually have.
Right, and you don't count the fences as necessarily being the lot line.
Exactly.
Just because there's a fence there doesn't mean that's where the property ends.
Exactly. Yeah. Fence lines are notorious liars. Okay, I mean, fence lines mean nothing. All right, so when we saw this property, we said, okay, how do we know these fence lines are where they really are?
Better look at a map.
You better look at a map
survey.
and talk to a surveyor to get them out here to find that out. If you're, it's sometimes not so critical when you have large acreages around you who have vineyards planted up against you. But if you buy a property in the country and there's a neighbor's house is next door, or their leach system is next door where you're trying to put a well in, right, then you have a problem because you need to be 100 feet away from that leach system. So there's all these things that you need to consider. So when we drove into this property initially, we said, okay, fence, acreage, okay. We also noticed there were 2 water tanks, that Allison said earlier. So we said, okay, this is a zone 4 water area. There's 4 zones of water in Sonoma County. You want to explain those?
Well, number 4, the zone 4 is the least amount of water available. Right. Zone 1 is going to be plenty of water.
That's going to be the valley floor of Santa Rosa. You can go down 20 feet and hit water.
Right. So in a zone 4, you have to prove that you can access water before you build on it.
Right.
Or in some cases do any improvements.
Right. So if you're buying bare land and you want to put a well on your property, okay, or you want to go ahead and build, first you're going to have to dig a well to show the county you've actually got water, and the county minimum is about 1.5 gallons a minute. All right, so in some areas where there's zone 4, 1.5 gallons a minute is what you're going to get. So you got to be very careful. This property bailed about 4 gallons per minute, which is good, but it was also done in the wintertime, which is a big difference when it's in the summertime.
Right.
So you got to be aware of that. There's areas of Sonoma Mountain Road here in Sonoma County where if you test today at 4, I get news for you. In the summertime, they may be less than 1 gallon a minute. So you got to be very careful about that. Look at a lot of historical data. Talk to Weeks or any of the well drillers in the county to make sure when you're buying this property, you're not buying a pig in a poke. Okay.
Yes.
And then also, like you said, there's 2 water tanks here, which is good. There's an old wood one we'll show you. Then there's a fiberglass backup, which is good. Then there's also another well.
Right. So, which is all good.
Yeah.
But to us, pulling into a country property and looking at that, it puts up some red flags in our mind. That, why was a second well drilled?
Exactly.
And was there a problem with the first one? And it could be the case of that it was too close to the septic.
Exactly.
Or it could have been that the well dried up, so we don't know. And then when you see two water storage tanks, typically when there's a water storage tank, it means that it's a low water area.
Right.
They're having to store extra water because the production isn't fast enough to keep up with just everyday use of the water.
Right.
So,
And as Allison referred to at the beginning, this is 1.7 acres. It usually is 2 acres or more for a property where you can allow a granny unit. Okay, that's kind of a county standard. This happens to be intensive agricultural usage, so you could have a little more leeway with that. Besides, these homes are grandfathered in. Now, interesting enough with this property, which we found out, is the main house, which is about 1,500 square feet, and the secondary house, which is about 1,100 square feet. They went to the county and deliberately had the bigger house made into the second unit and had the smaller house made into the primary unit. Now you kind of go, well, what's that all about? Well, that basically means that subject to the limitations of the septic system, you can now add on to that property as much as you want.
the smaller property
smaller
that they're now
property.
calling the primary property.
So it's a very shrewd thing to do. And how we found that out is that we employed a permit consultant. And we're going to come back and also tell you about what kind of people you should be talking to when you buy country property, because you need a really good permit consultant who can tell you all the ins and outs of in our case, the Sonoma County PRMD, which is the Permit Resource Management Division.
Yes.
Right. So, and we'll give you names of all these people that you're going to be talking to. So we looked at this property and we saw the vineyards. Now we saw the vineyards. We said, okay, are they keeping the grapes?
Right.
What's going on? And we
yeah.
found out they were being sold to C. Donatello, which is a very noted winery here in Sonoma County. Chardonnay grapes were in the Russian River AVA, which is the American Viticultural Association, which is probably the hottest, appellation currently in Sonoma County.
Right.
The Russian River AVA. So that's cool. So
Yeah.
we went, we're the Russian River AVA. But it's Chardonnay. And usually the hot grape in
the Russian River
is Pinot.
is Pinot. Yeah.
Pinot Noir, so but it's Chardonnay, which is a fabulous grape.
Makes
So
great wine.
so when we saw that, I went, okay, what's our vine count? How many acres is in vineyard? How old are the vines? What's their production? How much tons per acre? This type of thing.
Right. Is there a lease? Is it a long-term lease,
Exactly.
or is it owner maintained? Is
Handshake kind of thing. And turns out
Right,
in this
lots of
case,
questions.
it was a handshake kind of.
It was a handshake.
So there's no long-term lease, which means that the next owner could do what they want to do with those grapes,
Right.
which is a big plus for a lot of people. Long-term leases are great if you want to be total absentee, not have to worry about anything. You just want to come
if
out,
it's a good lease.
and look at your grapes. Okay, but
Which a lot of people want to do when
sure.
they buy country property. They
Yeah.
want to look at them. They don't want anything to do with them, and that's a
Exactly.
possibility.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we have to look at, okay? So you can see there's a whole bunch of things we look at as realtors that you as a buyer and a seller need to answer the questions we brought up. And if you're a buyer, you want to make sure you get all those questions answered. So we're going to come back, take a little break, and tell you all about septic systems, okay? We're going to
Oh,
we're going
boy.
to give you some names of somebody to call if you don't know, and we're going to kind of show you what's been going on with some photos, what the septic systems look like. So we'll take a break and come back more with our country primer, we probably call this, right?
Country primer. There you
country
go.
primer, okay, on buying country property in Sonoma County. That's Kelly. I'm Mike Kelly, and you're?
Allison Norman.
And we're the Kelly Norman team with Keller Williams Realty. If you want to get a hold of us, you can always call 707
799-3617.
or our email,
NoDumbQuestion@gmail.com.
because real estate, there are
No
no
dumb
dumb
questions.
questions. Okay, we'll take a break and we come right back.